question actually starts with Dakota Wood. Should the United States be involved in the Middle East, such as Libya, Syria, and Iran?
Pick some interesting countries. The first part of that question, should be involved in the Middle East, absolutely yes. We're involved in places in the country or in the world out of pure self-interest. We have markets that we want to sell American goods. There are raw materials and resources. We want to draw those goods or those items back to the U.S. so we can turn them into products that benefit the U.S. and the rest of the world. And there are also security threats. Iran is trying to develop a nuclear capability. That's not a good day for the Middle East, for Israel, the Western world, or for the United States. So if we're not there, somebody else will be. Somebody else is China or Russia that also harbors us ill will. Where do you see tyrannical regimes like we're in Syria, increasingly in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood taking control, Saudi Arabia, the royal families, pact of the devil with the Wahhabi imams in Saudi Arabia. Again, if we aren't there, these evils grow, they mature, and they start to pose direct threats to the United States. So we need to stand fast with Israel, and I've been there 3 or 4 times. I've worked with the Israelis on countless occasions. You see what good freedom, democracy, Western ideals, Christian principles do, not only for our own country, but for the rest of the world. Because there is energy, because there are strategic minerals and resources, and because left unchecked, evil does come out of that region. We have to be engaged at some level to prevent those kinds of things from happening. So the broader question is yes, we should be engaged. Each country is unique in terms of the circumstances and the dangers and interests that it presents to the United States. So each one of the responses are unique within that context.
Dwayne Pettigrew.
I have a mixed view on that, just from the standpoint of I do believe in standing firm with Israel as the ally that they pose for us, basically. But at the same time, I also have a little bit of a side to me that says if it's not an issue that we need to be involved in directly, particularly like the Libya issue, I have a hard time with us going in unless we're going to declare war. We've only declared war, I think, once since the 40s, basically, and I have a hard time of our guys going and being put in harm's way without the entire support of the nation. I think where you get the entire support of the nation is you have a vote on whether we're going to declare war. So whatever we do, wherever we send our troops, we need to support our men in uniform. And obviously, if we've got men in harm's way, we need to make sure they have the best equipment that money can buy. And one of the problems I have with what we're doing now is, at the time World War II ended, we had about 38% of our GDP invested in the military. Today it's 4%. And with the cuts that are becoming mandatory with the cut cap and trade issue, or cut cap and balance issue, we're going to reduce that from 4% to 3%. So that means less equipment for those men that are put in harm's way, and certainly we're sending them more places. So if we're directly involved in those places, yes, go. If it's an issue where it's an ancillary involvement, I say stay away.
Thank you. Dustin Rowe.
Well, the Middle East certainly is the most tumultuous area, the most tumultuous region in the world. And I know that political leaders in America like to say we're not involved in religion over there. But ladies and gentlemen, if you've read the Old Testament, you know that those wars go back to when God declared that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would be his descendants, and those are the people of Israel. Those covenants still stand, and the rest of the regions around there hate them because of that. They're not God's chosen people. So they've been fighting for thousands of years. They're going to continue fighting. Here's why we are there. Remember, there's 2 reasons. Number one, because we have to stand with Israel. We know that we do. We should. We know that Israel is God's chosen people. They're going to win in the end, and we need to be with God's people. But also, those are where the world's oil reserves are. And for that, I must say that we have had oil policies in this country that have been against our national interests. We've been buying oil from the Middle East for decades from our enemies and from Israel's enemies. Countries that do not support freedom, countries that do not support freedom of religion or freedom of speech, and we've made those countries and those kingdoms super wealthy because we bought their oil. At the same time, we have policies in this country that prevent us from producing our own oil and our own resources. So why would we buy oil and make our enemies and Israel's enemies wealthy and not put our own people to work and exploit our own natural resources that are available here in America? I think we have the cart before the horse, and we need to change our policies. If we got less dependent, if we become less dependent on Middle Eastern oil, we will not have such a vested interest to go over there and shed American blood for a region of the world that will never have peace until Armageddon. And not, again, to be overly religious about it, but if you read the Bible, it's pretty clear why they've been fighting, and they're going to be fighting until Christ returns. I believe that. And I think we can change our oil policy and still support Israel, and that would be my proposal if I were elected to be your congressman.
You know, you can't buy friendship. Oh, you might think you can, but you certainly can't buy friendship from anybody that absolutely detests you and hates you. They don't believe in what you believe in. They don't want to stand for what you want to stand for. You will not buy that friendship. It reminds me of the story of Solomon. He thought he could do that. And the exact same thing that happened to him in Israel in that day is the same thing that's happened to us in a slow, constant forward movement. There's no reason to be friends with anyone that actually detests you. The only people I say we need to be supporting the Middle East is Israel. Because why, you know, when people say, well, Iran, I understand all these things about Iran and these other countries. All we have to do is, why can't Israel take care of what they think needs to be taken care of, and we support them in doing so? I don't need to send troops, as far as I can tell, I don't need to send troops to Iran. But if Israel feels like they need to do something to stop a threat in the Middle East, I certainly want to support them in doing so. Now, at the same time, if and when that time comes, then let's go back and make sure that the Congress makes that declaration and not the President of our country. Let's make sure we get back to the Constitution and stick to what it says if and when we need to declare some type of war. But I'm all for cutting foreign aid. Why in the world, and just like these other gentlemen said, why in the world are we giving funding to people that not only are supporting our own enemies, but they're not doing anything to help us? Why do we continue to have problems if all these people we have all these friendships with, why do we continue having problems over that? I call it corruption, greed, and all these other things we experience in our own government. So I think we need to keep our money at home and help our own country. We have enough natural resources that God has blessed us with, but we're sitting here looking to others. That's the very wrong thing to do.